Man, this upcoming week is one that's really imbuing very expressive energy, very high energy, especially when it comes to our inner world, speaking our truths, but really lucky energy for many reasons. Not only do we have the Sagittarius new moon this week, we also see that the Sun and Jupiter will be entering the signs of Gemini, this mutable air sign that's all about communication, ruled by Mercury, the planet of information exchange and all things that of air. So things are feeling a bit lighter. We're able to more clearly articulate our inner world and how we're feeling. And there's a lot of luck in the air with this Sagittarius new moon involving Jupiter, because Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So I'm really excited to dive in with y'all. So get comfy, let's catch up a bit, and yeah, let's get started. Hello and welcome to my week ahead astrology reading. My name is Alina Alive. Welcome to my little corner of the internet. I'm your friendly neighborhood astrologer. And in this video, we'll be diving into the top transits happening this week and how it will influence us as a collective. So I go day by day, of course. And if you didn't already know, I have a dedicated Sagittarius new moon video where I dive even deeper into that lunation, along with the top transits that will be co-creating what's going on that day, but we'll also cover it here. As always, the number one way to support my work is to hit the like button on this video. And if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for my astrology newsletter, where I offer a full outline of my full and new moon astrology reading videos, including journal prompts and things like that, emailed directly to your inbox. So if that interests you, links will be in the bio. Now on Monday, May 20th, we know that Monday is ruled by the moon. So anything going on astrologically with the moon on this day will be more strongly felt. We also know that the moon directly impacts our inner world, our emotions, intuition, our instincts. And so on this day, it can be very helpful to pour into that aspect of our life, whether that be through talk therapy, journaling, just silent reflection, meditation, really holding space for our inner world in that way. But on Monday, we see that the moon enters a sign of Scorpio, which really adds this depth, this air of deeper emotions as well. And even it can feel a little bit more easy to tap into our intimacy within our relationships, opening up to one another if we feel comfortable to do so over the course of the next few days that the moon will be in Scorpio. This can be also an ideal day for things like deep introspection, psychological insights, like again, through having these deeper conversations with ourselves, whether that's through you literally just sitting in silence and allowing our mind to flow, or through journaling, and also just exploring hidden truths. And what I mean by that is the deeper aspects of our psyche, the shadow, maybe things that have been kind of like popping up in your head on and off, like you've been kind of ruminating about it, or they keep on popping up, almost like an intrusive thought type thing. Mondays are great days to really sit down and take stock of those things, because oftentimes we can be so busy, or we are in the habit of like pacifying ourselves sometimes, and we don't even realize fully like that has been sticking in my mind for a while. So Mondays can be great days to really pause and reflect on those things. Also on Monday, we see that the sun enters the sign of Gemini, marking the start of Gemini season. So a happy birthday to all of my fellow Gemini sun, moon, and rising friends, specifically suns. I am a Gemini sun. I love my Geminis. And yeah, man, we're the information exchange people, you know, we're the people who love to devour information and often share it with one another as well. But for all of us, when we see that the sun is transiting through Gemini over the next 4 weeks, it really imbues all of us and our collective energy with this excitement and sort of ease when it comes to expressing ourselves, talking to people, asking questions, and really getting curious about things. I feel like also during Gemini season, it feels a lot easier to finally catch up with people and finally connect the dots with things that we might have been thinking about for a while. And I think that it really lends itself to what I mentioned before on Monday, especially being a very opportune day for kind of collecting our thoughts. And we see that, you know, the full moon is coming up this week. So there's this momentum around our inner world sort of building to this fever pitch, to this high. And so it can feel also a lot easier for us to connect on that level. But next up on Tuesday, May 21st, we know that Tuesday is ruled by Mars, and Mars is a planet of action, aggression, dominance. You know, it's the ruling planet of Aries. So think about that cardinal energy of initiating and things like that. And on this day, the moon in Scorpio will be opposing Mercury in Taurus. So it's really interesting to see something like that, because it's the type of transit that can produce potential miscommunications, potential hiccups, and things like that, especially when it comes to, you know, all these mercurial aspects. But I will say that Considering that the sun will also be in Gemini, I think that it'll really be supporting these mercurial energies and things like that. But another aspect of this, because the moon is in Scorpio and it's really activating the aspects of our collective chart that involves our shadows, our triggers, and things like that. And there's like this square off, this sort of challenging aspect with Mercury, which involves communication. There can be a higher likelihood on Tuesday that there might be situations where either you or people around you might feel a little bit more emotionally sensitive, a little bit more likely to be triggered as well through our words, through the expression of things. And so it'll be important to pay attention to that. Mercury is in Taurus, so that also is heavily involving our relationship. So this might show up more specifically with people closer to us or collaborations of some kind, but definitely matters of the heart is more likely. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Now on Wednesday, May 22nd, we know that Wednesday is ruled by Mercury. And, Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini. The sun just entered the sign of Gemini. So again, a lot of these very expressive themes are going to be coming up. Don't be surprised if you notice this week that there's a slight influx in people reaching out, or there being more sort of invitations, or you finding out also just by chance about more gatherings that interest you. Follow that path if that interests you, especially if it involves you learning in some way, whether that's through learning a new hobby or developing something that can be very fruitful around this time. We see that, speaking of Wednesday being ruled by Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, we see that the sun in Gemini will be trining with Pluto in Aquarius on this day. Now, because the sun is in Gemini, we're going to be feeling these transits involving the sun on Wednesday more strongly for that reason. This networking aspect is definitely ideal for making allies that can help you to get your ideas, out there. Wednesday can be a great day for not only sort of networking, but reaching out and asking for help. Like, for example, it could show up as like reaching out to a colleague or a friend and saying like, hey, I saw that you did this like a few years ago. Do you think you can connect me with the person who helped you with that? Or, I saw you kind of seem like you have so much together with your business. How did you find your bookkeeper? How did you find your person? Like, not being afraid to just ask these really simple questions and remembering we are community-based organisms. We learn and grow as individuals and as collectives through asking questions, giving and receiving information. You're not in the wrong for literally asking simple questions. So don't be afraid to do that. It'll be very energetically supported on Wednesday, and definitely just leaning on community and leaning on people also to kind of vent and stuff, especially with the moon being in Scorpio, it being more likely that we are more acutely feeling some deeper emotions coming up. So don't be afraid to ask for help and to ask if you can vent with somebody. That can leave you feeling so much better. Next up on Thursday, luckiest day of the week in my opinion, because we know that Thursdays are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion in astrology. And not only that, but we have a Sagittarius full moon also on this day. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter as well. And we just have like a lot of interesting Jupiter transits happening on this day. So I'm excited to get into it. But to start off, in general, Thursdays can be very lucky and expansive days for sort of putting ourselves out there and really taking a chance on things. And again, this full moon being in Sagittarius is really one that is producing a lot of luck. I know that full moons are more heavily associated with letting go of things that are no longer serving us, but considering that it's not only in Sagittarius, so it's one of the most lucky full moons of the year, but it's also a flower moon. And this is a name given in the Northern Hemisphere from a seasonal perspective of the first full moon of May. And it's named that to signify the abundance of spring plants and animals and how they're really at their sort of fullest form in the spring season at this time in the Northern Hemisphere. So not just from an astrological perspective, but also from a seasonal perspective, we have this notable event that is all about culmination points. The full moon is a midway point in the lunar cycle. It's at its energetic peak where it's reflecting its peak amount of the sun's light off of itself and really illuminating the night skies and the earth during this time. And in astrology, it's associated with being a great time for not only reflecting on what you're ready to release, that way as the light wanes from the surface of the moon, so too can the energy around anything that you're looking to let go of also wane in its potency or its effect on you. But it's also a potent time of celebration, because just as we see that there's this energetic peak on the surface of the full moon, it's also signifying the energetic peaks that we have in our own lives. And specifically, when we see that it's in Sagittarius, it's a great time for reflecting on how far we've come when it comes to our personal growth in your career, in your relationships, in your mental health, in your physical health, in your nutrition, in your maturity, in your education, in your work life, and how have you grown? Sagittarius full moons are not only the luckiest full moons, but they're like the best full moons for celebration and acknowledging how far you've come. And so for that reason, I'm really excited about it. And I really think that this is a really potent time for not only celebrating yourself, because also from a manifestation perspective, whatever you feel, whatever energy you put out, that's what you get back, right? So during this time, it's not only great to celebrate, because not only are you acknowledging how far you've come, it's really important to acknowledge big and small moments in your life. It's not always about like, oh, I don't really have a huge accomplishment to celebrate. When we can pause to celebrate little steps that we've taken, it makes us feel more encouraged and more likely to come back and do that thing that maybe was hard for us, because we know like, okay, well, I know that this is an important stepping stone, especially because I took time to acknowledge it. But also, it's a great time to look at anything that might have been hindering your growth in some way and look at that. Consider if those things are things that you might want to be releasing around the time of this full moon for those reasons. So yeah, I'm really excited about this full moon for that reason. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but it goes without saying, the moon entered the sign of Sagittarius on Thursday before the full moon, before it's, the peak phase there. But in general, the moon in Sagittarius in general is an excellent time for adventure, travel, philosophical pursuits, expanding your horizons through learning and through exploration. So in general, Sagittarius moons are a great day for, again, all things that involve expanding your awareness, expanding your consciousness, expanding your perspective in some way. And that can be so simple. It could be reading a new article that you've been on a subject that you've been curious about for a while. You never know where these curiosities can lead you. And I think that that is such a beautiful aspect that both Sagittarius and Gemini share. And that brings me to my next point about the full moon, which is that all full moons occur when there's an opposition between the sun and the moon. And we see that the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius and the sun has entered the sign of Gemini. And Gemini and Sagittarius are on opposite sides of the zodiac wheel. So every full moon, we're being asked to strike a sort of balance and acknowledge the duality and the beauty in both of these opposing signs and how they can complement one another, and whether or not we're leaning on one side or the other. So the sun's Gemini energy is really all about more short-term fixes, short-term relationships, conversations, the more like dopamine hitting quick things. And Sagittarius, in a similar way to Gemini, also loves learning, also loves communication, also loves information exchange, but more so in the long term, in the more slow cooked, deep work, deep learning way that we learn things over the course of years, where we're able to look back and we connect these dots of like, oh my gosh, like I've grown in such a great way when I look at it from this long-term perspective, from this bird's eye view. But they still share this commonality, which is the benefit of just following your curiosities, the benefit of following the trail that is your passion and what you're interested in and seeing where that takes you. And so around this time, it can be very energetically supported for you to follow your curiosities in that way, for sure. We also see that Jupiter in Taurus will be sextiling Neptune in Pisces. It's a type of transit that basically makes it incredibly energetically supported for you to visualize whatever it is that you seek. Visualize what it is that you want to embody, or even visualize what you already have, what you've already experienced that you would like to grow, that you would like to see expand or happen again. It's not always about lack of like what you're missing. It's also about leaning into what is working and celebrating what you have enjoyed and what you already have. And I say that because Jupiter, of course, is the planet of luck and expansion and prosperity in so many ways. And it's coming together with Neptune in Pisces, which is this sign that is all about the spiritual, the imagination, religion, the intuition, all things that of water. So think about our emotions and think about even like lucid dreaming, our dreams, our manifestations, our relationship with this realm and the next in a lot of ways, right? And so when it's coming together with Jupiter, this very expansive planet, it's really helping when it comes to leaning into our imagination, our creativity, our spirituality, and utilizing it for expansion. Now we see that Jupiter, it's nearing its end of transiting Taurus. It'll be going into Gemini actually on Thursday, May 23rd. But before it does, it has a few transits going on while it's still in Taurus. And with it being in Taurus and it being in this sign that's very expansive in terms of our finances and our relationships, it can be very helpful to consider visualizing and getting into a centered state and really matching the emotional vibrations as well that we seek, especially when it pertains to our finances, expanding those things, expanding our relationships and our love life as well. Those are specific areas that can be helpful. And considering that this is happening on a full moon, y'all, this is a very lucky and expansive time. I'm telling you, this is a very potent window of time for us all. Next up, we see that Venus, the planet of love and relationships, currently transiting its home sign of Taurus, so it's very happy in that sign, will be conjuncting with Jupiter, y'all. Jupiter in Taurus. Right before Jupiter leaves this sign, y'all. This is very interesting and very lucky. Oh my goodness. And on Thursday, the day ruled by Jupiter, I'm telling y'all, this day is very interesting. So just like we saw that when Neptune came together with Jupiter, it expanded these spiritual, these imaginative, these manifestation, these dreamlike energies of Neptune. When we see that Venus comes together with Jupiter, it's also expanding the love and connection and the prosperity aspects of our lives that Venus influences. And so with Jupiter expanding those things, now can be a very lucky time for so many things. So think about actions and things that you would want to do that you would love if you had a little extra luck behind you on. So think about first dates. Think about maybe asking somebody out. Think about taking steps to fostering love and balance in your current relationships. Think about calling in new relationships, calling in that stuff like that. But also think about anything that might have been hindering these things in the past. And if you want to let go of them during this full moon, very lucky for that as well. With that said, we also see that Venus in Taurus will be sextiling Neptune in Pisces. So we see that Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter are all having this dance around this time, bringing in these very expansive, imaginative aspects, loving aspects, expansive, lucky aspects all together on the same day as this full moon. I think that that's very, very benefic in a lot of ways. And also, like, if you've been wanting to advocate for the healing of the country and of the world in a lot of ways, manifesting that right now is very helpful. Really expanding your love in any way that you can is very helpful at this time. But finally, we see that the last major transit on Thursday, May 23rd, will be when we see that Venus enters Gemini. Okay. So what's really great about Venus entering Gemini is that it just makes it a lot easier for us to communicate with one another. It makes it a lot easier for us to connect with one another. It makes it a lot easier for us to, make sort of social engagement, socialize, network, all of these things, especially with matters of the heart, especially if you're like, I've been wanting to reconnect with my friends, especially following winter if you're in the northern hemisphere, or maybe everybody's been busy in the summer and it's the fall now for the southern hemisphere. Venus entering Gemini not only imbues very happy-go-lucky, benefic energy when it comes to our love life, but it also offers this sort of spark of energy there and this sort of like spunky, high energy, curious energy moving away from the more grounded Taurus energy. So very, very, very good transits on Thursday. Very lucky, y'all. All right, next up, May 24th, Friday. We know that Friday is ruled by Venus. So a lot of those Venus transits yesterday will be strongly felt, especially on Friday. But I feel like a lot of those transits on Thursday will be strongly felt throughout the weekend, but notably the Venus transits for sure. Fridays are optimal days for things like romance, love, anything like that. It's very great day for that. We also see that there's going to be a few challenging transits on Friday, but they are transits that directly involve the moon. And the moon moves so quickly that a lot of these transits will be relatively fleeting. You'll only feel them more acutely at certain times of the day, and they won't really last throughout the week. So that's good, but they're important to note. So the more lighter transit that we have on Friday is when the moon in Sagittarius trines with Mars. So when we see this type of transit, it can bring in a lot of passion. It feels easier to take initiative and really tap into our courage in a lot of ways because of that action-oriented energy of Mars being at play. But it's still very lucky, still very benefic, and especially if it involves kind of leaving your comfort zone a bit, learning new things, maybe learning about travel. Oh, that's another thing I feel like on Thursday, looking into like long-term travel type stuff, farther travel can also be a very benefic thing that if you want to do that on that day, but also on Friday because of this transit with that. This is the type of transit that can make it very beneficial for standing up for yourself and others, taking initiative in that way, because it involves the moon, really your inner world, in the sign of Sagittarius. That's very philosophical, very informationally sort of curious, and it's coming together with Mars. So there's this initiative and this energy that's being pumped into those aspects of our inner world and our curiosities in that way. But the more challenging aspects or transits that we have on Friday involve the moon squaring with Saturn and Neptune. Now, these are the type of transits that can tend to restrict or even depress our feelings and our relationships. And a part of the reason why we have that is because the moon, again, it involves our inner world, but it's having these challenging aspects with Saturn, and Saturn is considered the strict teacher. And then there's Neptune that also involves our inner world, but really heavy on our emotions and our spiritual and intuitive aspect, and there being this clash there. And I think that what can happen is there being a bit of confusion in that we think that we, or others think that they know us. Like they think, I intuitively know what's up, and I know this, and that. And some people are feeling triggered, and you might end up judging someone or kind of like labeling someone, or somebody else does that with you. But there's this misinterpretation that's a lot more likely to happen on this day. There's also a higher likelihood of feeling sad or lonely as well, because again, Saturn is really pushing down on the moon, this square aspect, really bringing in these stronger sort of cold themes to our inner world in that way. We also might feel like past relationships might come up, or those moments randomly in the middle of the night or randomly during the day when you just remember a cringe moment in your life or a moment in your life from the past that brought on heavier emotions. That could be from past relationships or things like that. That's the type of thing that might come up on Friday. So be careful of that. But again, these are more fleeting transits that are likely to be felt, just for maybe the afternoon or the morning, depending on your time zone. So don't be too afraid of them, but they are something to take note of. There also can be a higher likelihood of confusion because of Neptune squaring with the moon. So Neptune, again, being our intuition, having this sort of clashing aspect with our inner world and our thinking processes and how we process things emotionally. So definitely pay attention to that. But on Saturday, May 25th, we know that Saturday is ruled by Saturn. And so Saturdays can be a great day for doing chores, taking up responsibilities and really meeting the demands that we might have already promised and agreed to doing, any sort of actions. But we also see that the moon enters the sign of Capricorn on this day, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So we will definitely be more acutely and strongly feeling this energetic shift when it comes to our inner world when the moon enters the sign of Capricorn. But some favorable or sort of best practices to do when we see that the moon is in Capricorn over the next few days is sort of long-term planning, career-related activities, looking into your goals and your ambitions and whether or not you're aligned with those things, just kind of like checking in and building any sort of structure, consistency, and practicality in your life can be very beneficial over the next few days, especially on Saturday, considering that Saturday is ruled by Saturn. Speaking of, ambition and growth in those ways, we see that Jupiter will be finally entering the sign of Gemini. I'm very biased. I'm very excited about this because I'm a Gemini sun. I have a lot of Gemini in my charts. And so I'm really excited about this, but it's not just beneficial for people, Gemini, sun, moon, or rising. It's beneficial for all of us because when we see that Jupiter enters the sign of Gemini, it basically ends up targeting its expansive and lucky energy, specifically within the realms of our lives that involve our communication, our networking, our learning, our information exchange. Think of things like the internet as well. Think of things like short-term travel. There's a lot of luck and expansion within these spaces, not only because of this transit, but because of a handful of other ones. We see that there's going to be a higher likelihood of innovation when it comes to technology as well for that reason. For the rest of the year, get ready for a lot of chatty energy because the planet of luck and expansion will be entering the very communicative sign of Gemini. It'll also, I feel like, make us all a little bit more adaptable. Gemini is not only an air sign, but its modality is mutable. So it's very flexible, very open to adapting and changing and being malleable whenever need be. And so that can be very helpful for us when things are changing in the world in that way and there being luck within that change. But we also see that Venus in Gemini will be trining Pluto in Aquarius. Now this can be considered a more intense aspect, and it can add a sort of newer depth of passion to our relationships, whether that be speaking of our partner, sharing information or getting into more intellectual arguments or exchanges. That is the type of thing that this transit can imbue, and that's because we see Venus, the planet of love and relationships, in Gemini, so very communicative. It'll likely involve conversation coming together with Pluto, which is this planet that's all about change, and change that involves evolving because of our acknowledgement of our shadows. And with Pluto being in Aquarius, the shadows that we notice will be involving the collective. So our communities, our more immediate community, but our broader community, whether that's nationally or on a global scale, there's a lot of critical eyes on communities and on global spaces in that way. And so when it's coming together in Venus, in Gemini, I think that it actually will bring in a lot of energy when it comes to discussing how we feel critical about things and why. It'll be a lot easier to connect with people on that way. But there can be a potential disagreements because Pluto does involve bringing up our shadows and bringing up things that do need to change. And so I think that this will likely also show up in our relationships. Like, think about your partners or romantic spaces or relationships of the heart, people who are closest to you, and that there will likely be situations or conversations that are really highlighting, like, some things need to change and we need to talk about it. We really need to talk about it. So be aware of that on Saturday. And also, with this being Saturday, ruled by Saturn, Saturn is a strict teacher. It's all about responsibility, discipline, coming into your own, growing, maturing. It could be a topic of like, you need to get it together. Like, let's talk about how we are going to get it together. Let's talk about how we are going to grow, either within our relationships, you as an individual to help the relationship, or as a collective. Those are the type of themes that will likely be coming up on Saturday and really will be felt for the next few days because it's involving these slower moving planets. But finally, on Sunday, May 26th, we know that the Sunday is ruled by the sun. It's a great day for vitality. And what I mean by vitality is what feeds your vitality. How can you pour into yourself in that way? Things like leadership, self-expression, the sun is a ruler of Leo. So think about those themes of allowing your inner child to come through, allowing yourself to step into your courage and into your leadership as well. Pouring into those aspects of yourself and of your collective, your family around this time is very helpful. But on Sunday, when we look at the transits, they're all involving the moon. So these are all pretty fleeting transits that'll be most acutely felt on this day, but they're still very notable. So we see that the moon will be trining with Mercury, the moon will be sextiling with Saturn, and the moon will be squaring with Mars. So when we see all of these transits involving our inner world coming together, what we likely will be experiencing is it'll feel a lot easier for us to express ourselves, that being the mercurial aspect of things. And it'll be also easier for us to learn something that we've been trying to figure out for a while, like finding that last puzzle piece to connect the dots. But we also see that it'll be a potentially challenging day when it comes to, my advice is to avoid any sort of arguments, if you notice like road rage as well, do not engage, like those type of things, because one, you never know what people are going through. You never know what they're ready to do. You never know what's going on with them. But also, these are the type of transits that can potentially make situations kind of escalated because people are feeling a bit triggered and they're ready to speak their mind, okay? So in general, Sunday overall is a fine day. I think that there's going to be a lot of energy, but considering the square with Mars, definitely avoid any sort of disagreements or arguments if you can, unless they're pretty calm and equitable. Like, it's okay to have a disagreement. You can totally speak calmly and have a disagreement. But if you're sensing that maybe you're feeling a bit more sensitive, or you're sensing that there's a little bit more anger or frustration that's at play, don't be afraid to just pause, set a boundary, and be like, hey, let's reconvene on Monday. You know what I mean? Like, let's circle back. Don't be afraid to do that. But that concludes my reading for the week ahead. I am sending you my love. I hope that you have the luckiest Thursday, Sagittarius full moon. As I mentioned before, I have a full video diving even deeper into this full moon. So definitely check that out. It's on my page, and I'll see y'all in the next one. And I'll wrap this up with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. I needed to hear that today. All right, I'll see y'all in the next one.